another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. I'm telling you, I'm going to get that on a freaking t-shirt. Of course, I'm your host. Just walk around at bar shows with, of course, I'm your host. It's 2026, January 2026. You know, this is my reflection, my outlook episodes. And this is actually the very first time we've had a hospitality interior designer. I've always talked about ops and culture and teams and training. But I haven't actually ever spoken to someone and chatted to someone about space and how concepts and space are a big factor in our restaurant scene. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. In the green room, as always, I go too deep and then some gold starts like coming out of myself and the guest. And I'm like, stop. We got to fucking stop. We got to stop and start again and make sure that we're not losing this gold in the episode. So today we've got Ann Squires Ferguson from Western Design Build. We actually crossed paths and started working together when Clive's got renovated a couple of years ago. And I really enjoyed working with her, and it's nice as a consultant per se. I'm colorblind and I'm not exactly creative in the way of like interior design. I can give my 2 cents, but it was really nice Venn diagram of right down the middle, figuring out exactly what was functional and what was kind of cool and good looking. So I'm really looking forward to this chat. Good morning, Ann. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. I'm excited to have the conversation on the podcast because usually we just shoot the shit off the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Usually over drinks at Magazine Awards.
Right? All good.
So let's talk about Western Design Build and everything that you do. How did you get into your interior design and Western Design Build become into fruition?
Well, that is I'm going to condense it down to about 30 seconds. Western started long before I was in the industry. This year is 35 years designing and building commercial spaces on Vancouver Island, in northern Canada, and actually internationally. I've designed spaces in Saudi and elsewhere, so that can be a lot of fun. I grew up in the far north, joined the military, got an engineering degree, specialized in weapons right out of high school, and went, as everyone does, engineering and weapons, into Asian karaoke. And so that was the leap. And still on the design side, loved the technicality, wasn't super passionate about karaoke. And so went on a bit of a spirit quest and discovered commercial interior design. I went back to school, got another degree a little later on, and came to interior design then in my early 30s, and worked for kind of the godfather of food and beverage here in Victoria, J.C. Scott, who's done all the old pubs, really incredible body of work. And so that was where I cut my teeth for a decade. And then I went out to launch my own studio in 2013 and got headhunted very quickly by Western. So took over in 2017. I'm now the CEO. We've got a team. We surge up to 14. Our core is 7. And we design and build most of the hotels, restaurants, offices here in Victoria and Vancouver Island and further afield. So
nice. So yeah. When it comes to hospitality spaces, what draws you to those spaces? Because that sort of intersection of creativity and construction, like functionality and looks, because I feel like it's sometimes a little bit different to like a house or an office, because it is so high function, but also usually high concept looks as well.
You've really nailed it there. That's why it's so fascinating to me. So coming from that engineering background, coming in, a hospitality space has to function. It won't be successful if it doesn't function. And the magic of working in hospitality is I'm working with pros. I'm working with bartenders. It's essentially like the cockpit of a fighter jet, right? And it needs to function. They need to have everything within their reach, and it's particular to that human being and their body size, their physicality, but also what's the demographic, and is that cocktail program evolving, or is it quite stable? And like we've done pubs that have 100 taps, and then and so there's a huge range. And it is that complexity is what drives my creativity and curiosity. And I couldn't do it without the hospitality people. You people are like, we got to keep our momentum up to stay with our hospitality clients. I always tell my staff, like, they go renegade so fast. You got to be on track with them. Like, we are shooting from the hip. We're making, because hospitality people, you know, are so motivated by service, and they're so knowledgeable, and that we really need to bring our A game. And so, like, if I get to choose, I'm always going to be in the Olympics. I don't want to run some, you know, village race, right? I want to be with you guys where the action is.
I remember when I made the move from Clive's and opened up Little Jumbo, I got so tired of how low Clive's wells were that I was like, I'm going to design wells for me. I'm 6'5", 6'6", and later on I did a seminar on how not to design stuff, and Little Jumbo was like, you must be this tall to work behind the bar at Little Jumbo, because
Right? Yeah.
if you were under 6 foot, it was going to be really uncomfortable for you. Luckily, I had one of my guys go in there and like change things up so a shorter person could work, but I wanted to be comfortable, so I just designed the bar to be comfortable for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to like that, as we were talking about the Venn diagram before, like construction, again, it's very different. Hospitality spaces are very different because the wear and tear on a hospitality space is very different to, say, an office or a home.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you mitigate that with construction workers and your general contractors when it comes to how to build to a level that you know is going to not wear and tear in 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, a huge piece of it is that we are design build, that, you know, that we are registered professional interior designers, and then the designer takes their hat off and puts on their hard hat and builds what they designed. And so there's zero lost in translation. And that's a huge piece. Also, you know, having worked with JC and coming up there, are details for how to build, you know, a bar upstand wall. Those are honed over 25, 30 years of precisely, right? Like the technicality there of like exactly how we need those penetrations to be coming up and where you're going to run your draft lines, and, you know, what does that well look like, and all of those pieces, that technicality, you know, and whether like we're going to use a fiber board or a cement board or we're going straight to stainless steel, right? And we have opinions about those things, and we bring them to the restaurateur or the owner or the bartender and say, you know, here are your options A, B, C, and these are the pros and cons of them. It's a decision that we make together. And then, you know, particularly in hospitality, this is true for all spaces, but especially ones where we're talking about like just wear and tear, let alone moisture, let alone the stickiness, right? And so we have details for drip rails, and we have details for, you know, overlapping skins and precision in that way. And because we build what we design, we guarantee that. And so there's no, and if something goes wrong, there's no finger pointing, oh, it was the designer, oh, it was the contractor. We're in there 100% fixing whatever, you know, if something didn't perform. Again, it's a long-term relationship, but most of our clients, you know, I've seen them through marriages and divorces, like, who are longer lasting than some of their life partners, quote unquote.
Yeah, I designed a space. I won't mention it, but one of the owners was a set designer for like she moved Magic Mike around.
Oh, yeah.
And amazing design work. But then I was like, okay, we need to make sure that the stuff wears really well so that in 6 months' time it's not completely worn out. So when it comes to dealing with clients, when you first sit down with them, because sometimes it's always the hardest thing, how do you balance out their concepts, trends, and what will be trendy in 5 years? Because I don't find it too much in Victoria, but in big cities, Singapore especially, like, you definitely see spaces that are trendy right now.
For sure.
But will look a little aged in like 2 years. How do you balance out like long-term concepts that could be trendy to start, but evolve over time?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm going to come out of the gate here. I don't love trend. I don't love the word. I don't love the meaning. You know, the idea of, you know, trends to me are something that gets followed. And I don't want to follow anything. What I want to do is a deep mind meld with the client, and when I say the client, it's not the owner. It might be, but often it's the owner and the ops manager and the bartender and the chef, like whoever the players are, that core structure. We want to do a deep mind meld, and we want to understand, like, not just their vision, but their heart, like what it is that drives them. What are those core values? And then we're going to come back with, like I always say, you don't need to put lines on paper. We're really good at that. What I need from you is this, what's driving you? There are other bars and restaurants out there. Why open another one? Especially because it's an incredibly difficult business. And so, you tell me what drives you and I'll come back to you. It could look this way, it could look that way, but I'm never going to be looking at what's trending. The beautiful thing is there are evolutions. And so, we're at a time where even like 10 years ago, technology was a gimmick. And now tech within the hospitality spaces is just deeply embedded. And the more seamless we can make it and the less visible, the more effective it'll be. And also you need to be able to change it out at a moment's notice. We don't know what's coming down the line. So, to have you served by a robot bartender, like, I think that's gimmicky, right? But, sustainability, like true sustainability is not having to rip it out. David Suzuki said the most sustainable vehicle is the one that's already on the road. And so, when we worked at Clive's, is a great example there, that travertine bar floor right at the bar. And it's showing a lot of wear because thousands of people have had thousands of happy nights at that bar. And my response was like, that is a treasure. Like, we're not doing anything. That's staying, because that's telling me that this is a place where good things happen. And we don't need to rip it out and replace it with another type of flooring. So, environmentally, but also like humans, I just turned 50. I like to think that I look more like myself now than I ever have. There's a distillation process. And so we try to impart that to our clients as well. It's like, if you invest in really high quality materials, that leather's going to age with you, right? That wood is going to age with you. Stone, right? Those are the things that we recognize that aging and appreciate it because we're in that same process.
You're talking about the big players in operations of a bar, a new concept, chefs and bar managers and bar leads and so on and so forth. Obviously, much more of a upper management style thing with the ownership. Have you ever said to an owner, like, "Hey, have you thought about talking to your chef about this design element?"
All the time. Yeah,
because owners,
like, I need to talk to your chef.
Yeah.
Right? The next meeting, you need to bring your, whether it's the person who's leading the cocktail program or it's the bartender who's there all day, every day. I need to know my biggest question is like, what do you want to keep? What do we have to not fuck up? I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on.
You can swear on this. It's fine.
But I, years in the Navy, and I still have a potty mouth. But the reality is that there is so much knowledge behind the bar. There's so much knowledge in the kitchen, and I guarantee that the owner doesn't have it. And so it's not negotiable. Often if we're working, on a new concept restaurant, I'm like, you need to have an idea of the chef and the menu before we finish the interior design, because those things need to be a cohesive experience. Now more than ever, it needs to be a sensory experience, and what's on the plate and what's in the glass and what's in the room all need to be telling the same story.
Yeah, an open kitchen when the kitchen doesn't look very attractive is like the worst thing ever. But I think when we first chatted, I can't remember, I think it was at the Yam Awards, and the hotel and I had already started chatting about like renovating Clive's, and then they obviously reached out to you, and then you came to me. It's like, oh, hey, we saw chatted. And one thing that drew me to you like straight away was that you did encapsulate my opinion to a degree into your work. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves as a consultant is after walking into a place after 6-12 months after opening, the space is gorgeous. They've dropped a million and a half on the space. And then I walk behind the bar and I'm like, fuck. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why did you go to Russell Hendricks and just get prefab stainless steel? Like, this is horrible. These haven't been redesigned since the 1970s. Like,
Yeah.
why did you do this? Well, we have 100 seats. We thought that'd be okay. One sink for 100 seats is not okay. But it's one thing that drew me to you was like that sort of incorporation of like my opinion in not so much just the outside stuff, because as you know, I am colorblind, so color's not really a thing for me. Um, so I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
With like, you do a lot of hotel bars, you did Fathom as well. How do you balance out that all day, all night sort of vibe? Because one thing I find in North America that is outside of hotel lobby bars and hotel restaurants is the worst thing is that it's very hard to keep a concept cohesive across breakfast, lunch, and dinner and late night, because I feel like in North America they're like, oh, I only go here for coffee.
Yeah.
I only go here for lunch. I only go here for cocktails. And it's something that I think is in Europe. You go to the same place for coffee, pastis, late night snacks, everything.
Yeah.
How do you sort of build a concept proposal around that where it is an all day sort of space?
Well, it's a really great question. Couple of answers. Number one, I travel a lot. And so travel through Southeast Asia, Singapore, of course, one of my favorite places, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur. There's so many lessons to be learned elsewhere. And of course, in Europe, you got to do your research. You have to go to Italy. You have to go to France. You have to, right? Like, I mean, you just have to do these things in order to have an appreciation for what good looks like. And more than ever, because our clientele are also travelers and also seeing different things. You mentioned that you're colorblind, not uncommon. Far more men, of course, than women are colorblind. That actually gives us a nudge to work with light and dark, high and low contrast, to work with textures. And so, black and white photos, when we remove the color, it's actually a lot harder to get the best black and white photo because you're dealing with fewer. I'm sure it's like a classic cocktail. There's only so many components in that old fashioned. And so you better be like on the mark with every single one of them. So, talking about spaces that transition, I think that it's really important that there's not a pastiche, right? Like, we're not just taking a functional bar and then splashing some decor, around on it, put a couple logos here, put a couple, right? Like, it has to be a truly integrated piece. And so often we'll take the bones and we'll run it. We can do renderings, whether they're 2D or 3D or even, video style. What does it look like? We can, here's a great use of technology. We can mimic whatever the natural lighting will be at the time. And so Fathom's a great example of that, where we've got a lot of natural light coming in off the harbor. We've got skylights, we've got, right, like all of that. And then the other piece that I would say is, more and more we're allowing, it's almost a mindfulness, and I hesitate to use that word because I don't want to jump on the bandwagon, but I will often sit and close my eyes and I will walk through a space in my mind before it's even been drawn. I'm standing, I'm stepping up, or I'm coming around the corner. I turn, there's a column, there's a window, and I'm sweeping that in my interior space. Often I'll do it before I fall asleep at night if I have a really sticky problem. And beautifully, my brain will work on solutions for me. And in the morning, it's really effective. I don't know if anybody else does that, but what I would say is design takes time because we need to move through those scenarios. And what I have discovered over a career now, 25 or 20 years in this business, is the idea of distillation of, like, if it doesn't need to be there, take it out. And then start adding pieces back in that really add value. And so, Fathom's a great example of we really changed what a wait station looks like, right? And we're able to move away from, stationary pads. Like now it goes right into like when they're at the table, they're using the tech and putting it in. So, they're not going and turning and putting their back to the room and right, like just changing the way a space functions so that it can function, as you say, from the coffee and the pastry in the morning right through to that last glass of wine before bed.
So you were mentioning technology earlier, and I think always this has been one of the hardest. As you were saying, like new POS systems are like tablets at tables now instead of like a big chunky 2 foot by 1 foot screen somewhere. Has that sort of definitely, have you kept on top of that sort of technology to offer that to your clients too? Because it is one of those things, because usually what it is you design a beautiful bar and then the owners or the operators are like, yeah, we're going to put a POS somewhere. And you're like, shit, like this beautiful mirrored back bar with nice steps things. And then this ugly ass POS gets put in the corner. And it's like, that's not where I would have put it.
Yeah. All the time. I think that it's our responsibility to stay on top of that stuff. You guys are busy serving great drinks to good people. Like it's our job to stay on top of that. That's why we go to design shows. I'm actually flying out in a couple of weeks to a huge design show in Milan because they're at the front end of that. And so, I go through the pavilion for pizza ovens. I go through the coffee pavilion. I go through the tech pavilion, right? Like what's happening, what's coming down the line. I have importers, I have, customs brokers. Last year I did a similar trip to Czechia because there's some really incredible restaurant and hotel furniture coming out that's very much appropriate for our market, really beautiful wood and leather and handmade. And so, that's part of this job, is staying at the forefront of those pieces.
So let's talk about like actually the build, because as you said, you flick hats. You've got those done. Everything's sort of been done. How do you sort of roll out and then Gantt chart contingents out actual build to stay within? Because we all know, like when people go, "Oh, when you're opening, Shawn," you say soon, because you just never know. It's just the answer is always soon. Yeah. As soon as I know, you'll know. How do you build it up? How do you build that expectations? Because a lot of the time, operators are paying rent. They are they are on the hook for and if they're not open, they're not making revenue. How do you sort of build that out with your contractors to make sure that everything goes to plan and that contingency works out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really helps that we are the GC. We do the construction management. And so when we're doing the design with the owner, we're actually flagging things during the design. This is a special order item. This is a custom made piece, these pieces. And so once we have sign off on certain things in the design phase, if we've got long lead time items, we're doing a project right now for a, large hotel chain that I can't name. We're actually still in design and also ordering the light fixture that's going to go in the lobby of that hotel, because we know that it's going to be handmade and every crystal needs to be, cut and polished and hung and right. And so that's part of that integration where we can really serve the client. I think the other piece is, we've been hospitality adjacent for, as an organization, 35 years. And so I have read more business plans and leases than you can shake a stick at. And so I actually really encourage my clients to bring us in on that conceptual, like very, very front end, because I can actually help you. And there have been, unfortunately, projects where like they're in love and they're ready to sign a lease. And I'm like, give me 3 days to do a test fit, because I don't think that you can serve the kind of meals that you want to from this space. Like or the base building doesn't have the extraction or sprinklering or
electrical.
Yeah, it may not have a 400 amp service or an 800 amp service, depending on what you need. And so we can come in and help you make those choices within a matter of days, literally, and really, avoid some very major pitfalls. Then the other piece is, we work back. And so again, it's like, okay, well, when do you want to be open? There, obviously you're going to have to be hiring staff and training them. And, you're going to do all this, that piece, and then the soft launch, and then, right. And so again, we've been through these processes with so many clients. Sometimes, it's a hard date. And so we actually change the design to hit that date. Other times we have actually like phased projects. And so they open, the cafe, and then we're behind. Fathom's a great example where they had to have, because they host tour groups, they had to have a functional breakfast room for the entire period. So we built a hoarding wall and completely finished one half of the space while the other half stayed open. And then overnight, one night, we took down the hoarding wall and flipped the spaces and moved it over 6 feet and built it again, and then finished the back end. And
Wow.
so, there are so many different ways of, like, I always say to clients, and maybe this is an advantage of coming to this industry from the military, from engineering, where, we laugh, good, fast, cheap, pick any two. And I'm sure you've heard that before, right? And so we do run it like a military exercise where like all these pieces need to be there. You need to have each one of these components to have a successful project. And we are deeply rooted in reality, right? Time and money and humans. And so I will, long-term client of mine, Dave Kindrat, everybody knows him in Victoria. And I remember him saying to me early on, one of my favorite quotes, "Nothing you wouldn't put in a cage full of monkeys," when we were talking, right? So when we were working on Lucky Bar years ago. But I can remember him coming to me when he had bought Fifth Street. And we were talking about doing like a really quick reno and shift. And, I said, actually stay open, just to run it for a year or two and see what the market is. And then come back to me later. Come back to me when you've made some money and the market, and right. And so, that's a really wonderful place to be embedded in deep relationship with clients, and be able to give them really good advice, whether or not it's, to do a project.
Yeah, I remember when I opened up Little Jumbo, and the landlord and the city council were like, listen, if you start putting too much water into the space, you're going to have to put an upgraded water main, which anyone knows the Little Jumbo space means we have to dig down the hallway from the street. It's like $5,000 a foot or some ridiculous price. And so what I did is I calculated the cubic feet of every single sink in the space and made sure I did not go over the cubic feet of any single sink in the whole entire place. And I actually shrunk it by 25%.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to upgrade our water main, and it saved us a whole bunch of money just by sitting there with every single basin and every single kitchen thing to make sure that it's just the little things that can cost you a whole bunch of money.
So often, I love that example. It's a great example. Is people think like, oh, it doesn't matter, just pick it up, just pick a sink. And I'm like, actually, and this is a JC-ism. He says, show me the detail that doesn't. Right? Every single one of those choices is so purposeful and measured, and then in the end, saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not the viability of the project.
So let's talk about 2026 and the direction of hospitality. Obviously, hospitality is under it's always in a sort of a state of flux. We go from, I'm going to be a little douchey here, but minimalist hipster bars to like high concept spaces like Irish pubs or Scottish style pubs. Where do you see 2026 sort of leading in that sort of trend? Because obviously everything's got more expensive. Like your chair's more expensive than it was before the pandemic, all these sort of things. And so opening a restaurant's got even more expensive. How do we evolve that into 2026 so that you can still build spaces that align with what you want as a concept, without dropping 1.5 to $2 million on a space.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to take a slight diversion here, and I will answer that question. But, you know, what do we need for 2026 is a big question. And I know we started to talk about this in the green room, where humanity is in a challenging chapter, right? We've all watched the movie. We all know it starts here and everything looks good. And then we go through this, you know, we're down at the bottom of the roller coaster. And as, you know, as human beings, we're dealing with some heavy shit. And from my perspective, where, you know, a bar, a nightclub, a cocktail lounge, you're not actually competing with, and this is one of your other guests, and I wish I could, you know, but I remember them saying, you're not competing with the bar down the street, you're actually competing with the sofa, right? You're competing with somebody staying home. In my opinion, the particularly cocktail lounges and pubs have an incredible duty and responsibility and opportunity to bring people together. Because with restaurants, you know, you go with your friend, you sit, you have that meal with them. But the cocktail lounges and the pubs, that's where you're actually forming relationship and community. That's where we're meeting each other and having healthy arguments, and hopefully not too many unhealthy arguments. You know, a drunk man's words or a sober man's thoughts. And we can actually form community and give each other a hard time, but also learn to love each other in cocktail lounges and pubs, right? That's a really beautiful space for that to happen. And so how do we, number one, the most important thing you can do to form community is go out and support your bar, your cocktail lounge, or your pub, right? We've got a neighborhood pub. We live in Fernwood. We're always up at Fernwood Inn or at Stage, and right, solving the world's problems, making friends, and that's really important for the general public. And also, how do we keep them in business? And here I'll actually answer your question. We use a technique called leapfrog. I made that up. It's not a thing. And when we go into a space, I'm like, what is the thing that is really compromising this space's ability to perform and their ability to make money, right? And so, you know, working with Dave at Fiammo, we had this crush that was happening on the bar side, but no one was going over into the dining side. And so we literally blew a hole in the wall. Like, we actually had masonry guys come in and disassemble, you know, a huge thick masonry wall to connect the two spaces, right? What's that thing that's really compromising? And then we try and leap that forward and leapfrog, and always going to the worst thing. Sometimes it's the back bar, right? If it's really not serving, if your bartenders are turning over, if they're quitting constantly, it's because it's not a great place to work. And so then, you know, maybe there's other reasons, but, you know, and so what could we do to make that a really great place to work so that they love coming to work because everything's where they need it to be and they feel productive and they're happy and they're facing the clients, right? Like, and so that's what I would say is, rather than just going in and wholesale changing everything, let's really, again, slow down, assess what's working and what isn't working, and then focus our energy. And sometimes, you know, I can get maybe the chairs, you want to change all your chairs. We've got all kinds of crazy techniques of bracing and refinishing and putting, you know, seat cushions on, and I can get you an extra 2 years on those chairs. And that extra 2 years is going to save you 60 grand or 80 grand, right? And so that's the sort of thing, like you were just saying, talking about the sinks. My family hates going out with me because most of the restaurants we've worked on, and I'll be like, oh, you know, that's the chair, we added a bracing, you know. Like,
yeah. I know exactly how that feels. My wife would be like listening to this right now going, yep, that's exactly my life when I go to a restaurant.
Totally. I have 16-year-old twins, and they don't even have to say anything. They're just like, oh.
Yeah, I've got a 15-year-old. She does the same thing. She's like, why does everybody know you?
Yeah, totally.
Like, why do people know? Like, we walk down the street. How do you know him? How do you know her?
It's funny. Yeah.
it is. I'm actually blown away because I thought this conversation would go this way. No, I didn't think this. I actually didn't think this conversation was going this way at all. Just your mentality between it, because like I've worked with a lot of interior designers in the past, and it's very rarely such a collaborative talk about how, like, it's more how much can I spend of your money so I can get my little kickback. It, it and it's just like, as you were saying, like if a staff member is not happy with the ergonomics behind the bar, I completely agree with you. Like it's these little things that I think ownership doesn't understand. It's a spider web, and if one section of the spider web's hollow,
Yeah,
it breaks down a whole section of the spider
totally.
web. And having that ergonomics for bartenders is a big thing when I comes to design. Post Little Jumbo, because that was a whole different animal. But it is something that I've never actually collaborated so heavily with an interior designer when it comes to like we can cover those. So I'm all about that. I like that chair. I love the style. It fits the space. It's great. We need to fix it though. We need to recover it or something like
Yeah.
that. So you've got new clients coming in for 2026. Are there, say, like 3 non-negotiables that you try and instill in all owners when they come to you for design work? Because a lot of the time it comes from a very lofty concept head. Is there ways that you sort of like line up 3 like non-negotiables for owners to go, hey, listen, if we're going to do this properly, these are the 3 things you need to do?
Well, right out of the gate, and we're a lot unusual. Number one, because of the design build integration, like deep, literally your designer is your construction manager. The another piece is, and I didn't set out to do this, it just kind of happened. My team is 100% female. And they, so it's good for anyone in construction to know Carhartt's actually makes yoga pants, and there are steel-toed Uggs. And so they can, I love it because you send a young woman onto a construction site and they're like, oh, are you delivering? It's like, no, I'm the site super, I run it. And it's rock and roll. That comes from my background. I come from a big family. I have 3 very large, very loud older brothers. And so and a wonderful younger sister. And so my entire childhood, I was making room for myself at the table. And so now that really is, I thought it was about design. I thought it was about construction. My legacy is going to be, bringing young women into this industry with me and helping them be confident. And so our first one right out of the gate is we have a strict no assholes policy. And we're really clear about it, our expectation of how we're treated, of how people speak to us. You can disagree with us, but there's a structure for an expectation of respect and showing up as a decent human being. And so, that's right out of the gate. And it's also, sure, it's from the client to us, but it's also within the client group. And so we won't work with people who are assholes to each other, because it really pulls us all down. And so if there's a compromised human decency component, then that's going to be a no-go for us, right? And fortunately, it doesn't happen very often, which makes it, when it surfaces, it's really obvious. Like, oh, wow, yeah, no thanks, we're going to take a pass on that one. The next one that I would say is, sometimes clients will hire us and ask for our best work, and we give them our best work and appropriate for their project, and they're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And that's totally fine. I have no problem at all with that. One of the things, though, is like, we're by the book. I run a really tight ship ethically. And so nothing is ever under the table. Like, we always go for permits. We always pay our trades. It is, there's a way of showing up and doing business. And if you're going to be here long term, then you're going to have to, treat everyone, again, we're back to that human decency. So you can't, not pay someone because you decided you didn't like the color of the tile that you approved, right? It's like, yeah, so we're going to hold people accountable for those decisions. And then, for us, one of you can't live in Victoria on Vancouver Island and not be connected to the natural world. And so whether or not a client comes and says, we want to make sustainable decisions, the reality is good design is sustainable design. And that's, the 3P, the people, profit, planet. And so we're going to make the right decisions sustainably. And we're not going to bring you products that harm the earth or harm the makers, right? And so if that doesn't align with a client, then that's fine. It's just not the right client for us. Right. And so we love educating our client teams. We love introducing clients to handicraft makers, whether that's the person who's making the beautiful leather aprons or the slump glassware or, whatever that is. That's a really passionate piece for us. And we love getting you guys out. We also love doing research. And so, when we were working on Fathom, Kirk and myself and our studio manager, Sarah, went over to Vancouver for a weekend and hit, Nightingale and Reef Bar and so many. We make it fun whenever we can.
Yeah, it's sometimes difficult to explain to my accountant why I have so much food and beverage on my business account.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm working, man. I'm working. And because I do training, when I go to the liquor store and I'm picking up bottles of alcohol, expensive alcohol to do training with, he's like, is that really a write-off? I'm like, I got paid to do training about this product. Yes, it's a write-off. What happens to it after the training is none of my business. Well, none of your business. This has been a great chat. So at the end of every episode, I do 5 deep podcast questions. I'm only going to give you 4 because one of them is actually, what do you hope your legacy would be? And you laid it out so beautifully that I absolutely loved that. But what is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most? And how do you carry that forward in your life?
Love it. At the risk of being a little tongue-in-cheek, I had a really wonderful experience. I received a gift in 2002. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And shitty gift wrapping, but such a treasure there. And until you have a brush with mortality, particularly your own, we squander our time and energy and resources. And to have that experience and realize, hey, listen, this is all we got. And so, pay attention. And that has really given me so much clarity. And now I am able to look at opportunities or look at challenges and assess them in relation to what matters to me, what my core principles are. And then, so, coming back to work after having a year off emergency surgery and chemo and, the whole bit, it's actually made my life so much better because I've let go of the things that weren't serving me.
If you could leave one lasting message or piece of advice for the world, what would it be and why?
I'm going to quote, I think it was Tommy Douglas. My grandma loved to say it, a rising tide floats all ships. And so I don't actually believe in competition. I don't think any of us are truly competing with one another. We're all running our own race. And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it because it's right for me. And if it benefits somebody else, that makes me so happy. And I hope that they take it and use it and squeeze every drop out of it. I certainly am inspired by the people around me, and I have so much respect for artists and professionals. And so, adding good to the world is the right thing to do, and how it benefits or lifts up others, that's just a bonus.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
Maybe your riff on that last statement is you're on your own journey. And I having this unusual career path with engineering and the military and audio engineering, karaoke, and, and then finally interior design and then construction, the answers that were right for me have never been the answers that were right for other people. And I wasted a lot of time looking at mine and looking at somebody else's and thinking, am I crazy? And I wish I'd been more centered when I was young to just trust myself, to know that I know who I am. I know what matters to me. I know what I'm good at. I'm going to follow my passion and see where it leads, and be a whole lot less concerned with jumping through, career hoops at whatever age or whatever, right? Like, I just let that all go.
I think I'm 40. I just turned 45. So I think, as you said earlier in the show, like, as you get to a certain age, you've distilled yourself down to who you actually are. I feel like more myself now than I did 5 years ago and I did 10 years ago, which is, it feels odd because you feel like you know exactly who you are when you're 20. And then you look back at 20 and you're like, you're a fucking idiot.
I knew nothing.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
I think it used to be like those certificates on the wall, or, even success. I was never motivated by money. And money, if it paid, that's great, but that wasn't why I made decisions. But certainly, outward recognition, and that lens flips, and that was part of, my diagnosis gave me an opportunity to look through a different lens. Success for me, I of course, a lot of us practice gratitude. I have a beautiful life, and I live in Victoria. I, do what I love with humans that I care about. I bring good into the world. I have a wonderful, husband and kids and one dumb dog, and right, like, and so taking the time to, say, actually, this is a really good life. And, do I get a nicer car? I don't know. Do I go on a longer vacation? Maybe. But being really happy, success is being happy with what you have, as well as constantly, like, I am exhilarated by momentum. I'm insatiably curious. And so that kind of pulls me into the next moment. Like, what's over here? What's under that rock? What are we going to discover? What kind of wonderful drink am I going to drink today? I don't know, and that's success for me, is enthusiasm about my own life, driving me forward.
And to finish it off, what's your favorite cocktail when you go out to the bars?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Classic. Make it easy. We do a classic.
Classic cocktail. I do love a French 75. Feels very festive. It's a little bit feminine, but you can drink a lot of them, I'm saying. Right. Also a huge fan of Aperol Spritz. I know it's having a moment. I'm like, I was drinking it before any of you. So yeah, for sure.
Do you do your French 75s with gin or brandy?
Always gin. Yeah, I'm a huge gin aficionado. I actually have a gin locker in my house, and nice. And I do prefer. I know everybody, with a tonic, but I love gin and soda because I really love gin forward, like the. Gins are that's my love language.
Lovely. Well, that was an amazing talk. I'm not sure what I expected. We've chatted and we've crossed paths, and when I reached out to you, I think you either posted something or you liked something on LinkedIn, and it clicked in my brain that I had to have you on the show, and I hadn't. I have a vision board of like all the people I want to have on the show. So as soon as I did, I think as soon as I saw that notification, I was like, I reached out to you straight away and said,
yeah, I love it.
So I really appreciate you carving out some time for me. That was amazing.
So much fun. Much fun
to catch up. So thank you so much. I'll let you know when this is all out and kicking around, and